What's going on, guys? We had some serious audio issues this week, um, mostly on my end. Basically, my mic was just screwing up a bunch, and so you'll hear some cutting out, you'll hear some peaking. I tried to cut it as much as possible, but some of it I just can't. There'll also be chunks of audio I just had to completely remove. I'm gonna try to add a little bit of voiceover when I find appropriate, but just bear with us. Um, Next week we'll have it all fixed, I promise. Thank you.
Welcome to another episode of the Anyone But Cam Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your commissioner, your 2-in-1 commissioner. My name is Frankie, and sitting across the internet from me is Cam. Cam, how are you doing today?
3-0 Cam's doing pretty good myself, I'd say.
Dude, we're doing pretty good for ourselves.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
I'd say that we are both, top of the standings pretty well. Some teams might look a little bit better than others, but who's to say on that account?
I mean, I'm in the playoffs right now. If the playoffs start tomorrow, I'm in the playoffs.
All right. Yeah, good thing this season's super short.
I'm in playoffs. Anyways, thank you all for joining us for another episode. We're gonna we're gonna do our regular stuff. Rewinds. We're gonna do a new segment this week. We're gonna do a state of the divisions. Kind of talk about how the divisions are going so far. We're gonna bring back our power rankings, and then we are going to do our matchup of the week. Spotlight, and then we will do our mailbag if we have some good questions. We will
Hopefully
see.
we'll have some good
Sound good to you, Cam?
Yeah, sounds great.
Alrighty. So let us recap week 3. We're going to start with our game of the week, which we had set for Jake versus Tyler.
Yeah, that game, not quite as close as we may have thought it was earlier in the week. Jake really stepped
Jake,
up in the spotlight.
Put the best performance of any team this year so far, I believe.
Yeah,
153.
Just looking at it, Tyler's strength in his team is definitely at his wide receiver position, and they did not step up as much as he would have hoped in order to beat out Jake Logan's weak juggernaut, I guess. And Jake's Adrian Peterson trade definitely looks good on his end now that Marquise Goodwin lost his beautiful quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
And that Rams wide receiver stack that Jake has going on definitely helped put him over the top there.
Yep, Jake had a really good week this week. Just looking on his side, I'm also just going to look ahead real quick for him and just think about he had a really great week this week, best performance so far. He does have a couple issues going for the next week looking forward, but with Adrian Peterson on bye and Devontae Freeman still injured, so we'll see if he can be able to put together a similar performance next week. Probably not. On Tyler's end, just kind of average to below average performances from mostly everyone. I mean, James White continues to be like Tom Brady's security blanket, which is nice because he had a good week when the entire Patriots offense was pretty much down. So
yeah. Tyler's definitely missing Jay Ajayi on that running back core.
But I do say, looking forward for Tyler a bit too, with the emergence of Baker Mayfield, I think it gives an upgrade, a bit of an upgrade to both Njoku and Antonio Callaway. So I think there are brighter days ahead for Tyler.
Maybe even Nick Chubb. You never know.
Maybe even Nick Chubb. All right, let's head into our next matchup. We're gonna look at Dylan versus Greg. Dylan continuing his winning streak, the only other team besides for you who is 3-0 so far.
And Greg continuing his streak of only playing one running back each week, with Leonard Fournette, putting that fat 0 on his bench or on his starting lineup.
Yeah, Greg starting Fournette 2 weeks in a row. Both we got this week. You can't get him. You can't knock him too much because it was kind of a game time decision. Maybe just wasn't, didn't have his finger on the trigger. It's not it's more reasonable than last week when it was like by Thursday we knew he wasn't going to play.
Yeah, I have some inside information from my reporting skills on Leonard Fournette this week. It turns out Greg was asleep at the start of the game, so he did not have a chance to change his lineup.
Greg, I'm going to give you some advice. You know what I do every Wednesday morning? I set an alarm for 7:45 so I can do my last-minute waivers. Just do the same thing for the games. It's very simple. Just wake up 10 minutes before they start, and there you go. It's really easy, actually.
I don't know, 9:50 is pretty hard for Greg.
Maybe, but it's the kind of commitment it takes to become a champion, and Greg should know this.
Yeah, he should. Former champion Greg Bates.
Greg, it's a super questionable decision, in my opinion at least. I mean, obviously you can look at it results-based, but I don't know why you wouldn't start Matt Ryan in this week against a very exploitable secondary from the Saints. Yeah, and if he would have started him, he would have won the week. So I don't totally get why he started Rodgers, especially when it's Matt Ryan in Atlanta, but as opposed to Aaron Rodgers going with the Skins. But
Greg does have a man crush on Rodgers, and that could lead to his downfall.
All right, moving on. We got our next matchup here: Levi versus Justin.
Yeah, Justin was really hoping to get a little bit more out of Latavius Murray with Dalvin Cook not playing this week, and if Latavius Murray went off like running backs have been doing against Buffalo, he maybe could have pulled off this upset, but didn't end up working out for him.
Yeah. Just looking across the board, Christian McCaffrey, an incredible, probably the best game of his career though so far. Maybe not fantasy wise, but like NFL wise, he just ran the ball like a madman, which I think bodes well for the future because like we've seen the past season and like a quarter or whatever to get things going through the air, but having him have that baseline on the ground, I mean that's looking really good. Other than that, down weeks from T.Y. Hilton, just pretty average weeks from most of his players.
Justin's continuing to get solid production from his kicking spot at least, and we know that's very important to him.
That's true. A very down week for Chris Thompson this week, looking over to Levi's side, which I didn't get to watch the game, but I'm assuming gave the ball to Adrian Peterson instead.
Yep. It worked out for the Redskins, that's for sure.
Yeah, sure did. Will Fuller had a good game as well. I think it's the second week he's outperformed DeAndre Hopkins, but just barely last week. But this is the second week in a row, so that may be something to monitor. Although Will Fuller is definitely much more touchdown dependent than DeAndre Hopkins is.
Moving on. This that we're looking at next is Austin Lassiter versus Logan Roth. And it was my upset of the week. My first successful pick.
Our lowest scoring matchup of the week, mostly because of on Logan's end. And if you just go over to his team and scroll down, look at his bench, you can see Calvin Ridley for 37, Carlos Hyde for 23, Crow for 18. And because of those start-sit decisions, Logan was the Ben McAdoo Award for this week.
I'm not asking, and I haven't heard a thing. So I'm going to keep my head down and keep doing my job until I hear otherwise.
Congratulations, Logan. You really earned it.
Other things that didn't help to contribute of Philip Lindsay's ejection. Can't score much points on the field, as it turns out. And overall, I just feel like the big takeaway from Logan's side is that I called it when I said his team is in shambles after the Zurlin injury, and 68 points. I don't know, man.
Yeah, he's definitely barely clinging onto that division lead he has right now.
It's very true. Over on Lassie's side, he started Amari Cooper, and Amari Cooper does what Amari Cooper does. Chasing points, not always the best idea. And then we look over here, he also decided to start Josh Gordon, which I didn't totally understand why he would think he would play this first week. But I said he just really likes Josh Gordon.
Yeah, Lassie, from the bottom 3 roster spots on his team, got a combined total of -9 points, but still pulled off the win. That's impressive.
Yeah, I don't understand. Obviously the Dan Bailey thing is just kind of a really odd game. But I don't understand why you start the Falcons defense against New Orleans. Again,
Yeah.
the questionable Falcons plays. It's a theme this week, but whatever.
Definitely a lot of questionable coaching decisions in this game overall, but last year's team talent was able to overcome.
Very true, very true. Alrighty, let's move on to my game. My game versus Jacob Pond, the closest game of the week.
That was a nail
One
biter.
that came down to Monday Night Football.
Hey guys, it's Frankie from the future. Basically, in this section, I just talk about how Kenyon Drake is a bona fide bust. About how the Monday night game was super fun to watch, if not incredibly stressful. Fitzpatrick did enough. Juju did enough. I'm very grateful for that. I do a little bit of summary on my team, but that's about it. The audio here was unrecoverable, so yeah, get right back into it.
Kenyon Drake, who knows? And I'm hoping Le'Veon Bell gets traded to the Jets or someone so he can actually play football, because that'd be nice.
That
Playing
would
football is
definitely
fun.
make your team a lot better. That's for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I didn't even take a look at JP's bench. JP's bench went off today. Oh my god.
Yeah,
Or
it
this
did.
week. Wow.
He obviously should have known Tom Brady would have gonna suck against the amazing Detroit Lions defense.
Yeah, another down week for
Obviously.
Gronk. Not as bad as last week, obviously, but not great either. But yeah, he put up a fight matchup. We're going to do Cam versus Devin.
Going into this matchup, I was definitely the most worried about Devin's Eagles stack against Indianapolis.
Yeah.
You know, they are always prone to put up a lot of points, but looking at all those players on the Eagles team, they're all got those red numbers showing that they did a little bit worse than they were expecting. And that
Yep.
makes me feel good. Otherwise, Alvin Kamara just carrying my team on his back. What a great guy.
26.5 points without a touchdown. That's
Yeah.
insane.
15 catches. Just stud all over.
Yeah.
Definitely got to do better in my wide receiver position now. That's worrying me. Well, if we're talking about Patriots bust, then there's a lot to go around, that's for sure. And just hoping that they'll figure it out once September ends and maybe I can get some production from it. But we'll see.
For this next section, we talk about Devin's Eagles stack, of course, and the potential upgrade for every player involved now that Wentz is back, and just talked a little bit more about his team. And then we went in and introed our next section of the podcast, the state of the divisions.
Yeah, so I just thought this would be interesting to do because we're done with our interdivision matchups for the start of the season. So we just want to see where everyone's standing. And the first division that I thought we should talk about is yours, Frankie, the Studs and Stoners. And I thought it was interesting that your division only has one team that has scored over 300 points this season. Definitely not, as good as all the other divisions, as they either have 3 or all of the teams scoring over 300 points. And it's also pretty interesting that the team that has over 300 points is in third. It's pretty crazy, actually.
I basically respond here saying that I agree that our division is really up for grabs and that all of us have a really good shot at winning it, and that's super important because I don't see any of us being wild cards. I mean, it could happen, but I feel like it's much more likely that second place team in our division ends up in like 7th or 8th seed going into the end of the season. So yeah, back to Cam.
Yeah, it's going to be a tight race. Another interesting note is about Jacob Pond's team. He has won every week that the Patriots have won. So he's probably rooting for them to turn it around. Moving on, we'll talk about the next division. I don't know how we decided to say this, but I'm calling it Rotlack. Well, looking there, this team is definitely a bit more segmented and not as close as your division, as Dylan and Levi are both pretty solidly in the top in points scored and record, with Greg and Justin sitting there on the bottom. Levi, Dylan both have a solid shot of either winning the division or getting the wild card spot, but Greg's team has definitely not been looking super hot, and Justin has scored a decent amount of points but is sitting there 0-3, and they got to hope for something big to change if they're going to make a shot at playoffs. One other note on this division is it appears to be the at least spendy when it comes to fab, as the lowest fab owner in this is Justin with $189. So everyone has spent either $11 or less.
Great analysis. If only we lived in a world where my microphone didn't completely crap itself and I could respond.
Finally, coming to my division, the Alphas, which has definitely seemed to be living up to its namesake right now. 3 of the people in the division are all top half scorers, and then Tyler is sitting there at 0-3, which doesn't look great, but he does have 50 more points against than the next highest team, and that's almost ridiculous. He's definitely not out of it at all. He just got to, go all alpha on the rest of the league.
I'm just going to run through my power ranking quickly because Cam says a lot in his, and he has a lot of good stuff to say. So I'm going to run through mine real quickly.
Vegeta, what does the scouter say about his power level? It's over 9,000! What, 9,000? There's no way that can be right!
Starting with number 12, I have Lassie, mostly because he is squarely in 4th place in the best division in the history of fantasy football. Right next to him, I have Greg at number 11, 11th most points scored, second to last. Yeah, not great either. At number 10 here, I have Tyler. I think Tyler should be ranked somewhere around 6th or 7th, honestly, but part of my power rankings takes into consideration the likelihood of them making it to playoffs, and starting 0-3 is not doing himself any favors. So that's why I have Tyler down there. I'm looking to see Tyler climb the rankings in the next couple of weeks now that he's out of division play. Moving on, the next 3 teams, which would be 7, 8, and 9. Yeah, ranked 7th, 8, and 9. I have myself, JP, and Logan, in whatever order you want. Honestly, it's just such a toss-up between the 3 of us. Pretty evenly matched teams, pretty evenly matched scores so far, and it's a toss-up. Next up, number 6 then would be I have Justin there. Justin, so a solid start so far, even though he's 0-3, but he's in a much weaker division, which is why I have him up higher than I do Tyler. Number 5 then would be Levi, who has, I believe, the 4th most points scored so far. Yeah, he's looking really solid. His receivers are amazing. Number 4 here I have Devin, who is getting an overall power up with Wentz being back for his entire team, and I know he's only 1-2, but I feel like he definitely has the potential to have some really, really strong weeks ahead of him. Number 3, I have Jake Logan, who has second most amount of points scored overall, mostly due to this week, but I think just overall he's a super strong team. And then number 2, I have Dylan. And at number 1, I have Cam, obviously. I think Dylan and Cam are in their own tier at this point. I would give Cam the edge, though, just because he has the weeks where he can score like 150 points like any week, where Dylan, it's much more dependent on just the Vikings, and if they have a down week like this week, it could all come crumbling down literally any week. So yeah, those are my power rankings, and now to Cam.
All right, so mine has a lot of similarities, but also a couple differences. So, like you, I also have Lassie at 12. Like, his team just doesn't stack up as well as a lot of other teams. With Amari Cooper looking like a pretty big bust, his wide receiver core just isn't that great. His running backs outside of Saquon Barkley aren't anything to write home about, with LaShawn McCoy not being super great. Drew Brees is looking like Drew Brees old, which helps put up a lot of points for his team, but it's not a great team overall. And then next, you had yourself at 8th, but I actually put you at 11th. This could definitely change with Le'Veon Bell if he gets traded, but just looking over your team, like you said, Kenyon Drake kind of looks like a bust, and Tevin Coleman is currently your best running back, and once Devontae Freeman comes back, that doesn't look great for you. Juju Smith-Schuster is amazing, but Larry Fitzgerald just isn't doing much for your team. Marvin Jones, could be considered the 3rd wide receiver on the Lions with Galladay's breakout, and that's not a great flex play. And and there's just not a lot on your bench to be excited about, in my opinion, besides Sammy Watkins. Next, I have Greg at 10. You had him at 11. Greg isn't scoring a lot of points, that's for sure, but he has had a lot of, not great start-sit decisions with his running backs not ever playing. And I'm hoping that he can actually, start managing his team well to put up some more points. After that, you had Logan at 9. I put Logan at 9 too. He's top of his division right now, but his team just, it's relying a lot on the Browns and the Jets, which just aren't super great football teams in general. And he's about to get destroyed this week, which isn't going to help his team at all. Next, you had JP at 7th. I had him at 8th. It's about the same. There's a lot of Patriots reliance on this team, and they just haven't been doing great. And David Johnson, has all the talent in the world, but the Cardinals just can't get any offense going at all. To the more interesting things, Justin, even though he's sitting there at 3-0, is still 7th in the power rankings. He's scoring a lot of points, hoping that he can finally, get a defense that can help win him some games. But his team isn't great at the running back position. With Joe Mixon injured right now, he's forced to start Chris Ivory this week. We'll see how that goes. But another 3-0 team is right next to him, Tyler, for me. You had him at 10, I have him at 6. Because he has some of the best wide receivers in the league. And his running backs aren't great, but with Ajayi being injured, you just can't really blame him for that. And if he comes back with James White looking like a solid pick, he could have a solid all-around team. Next, you had Jake Logan at 3, but I actually have him at 5 because, he's been scoring a lot of points in certain weeks, but all of his receiving options are on teams that always score a lot of points but have a lot of weapons. So it's very possible that any week that all the receiving could just go a different way than the people on his team. And then Zeke, is basically the only thing for the Cowboys team. Don't really know if he'll be able to shoulder that entire team for the whole season, or if his body can even handle that. And his other running back options aren't looking super great. Next, I have Devin at 4. Like you said, he has some solid running backs with Gurley and Jordan Howard, and Kerryon Johnson is looking like he could have a very solid second half of the season. And then if the Eagles come back to their offensive dominance of last season, then his team has so much upside, it could be a league winner easily. You had Levi at 5, but I actually have him at 3 because he has just such amazing wide receivers, and then his running backs aren't great, but you see Mark Ingram sitting there in the wings with his suspension, and that could help, solidify that position. And just having Kelsey in the tight end spot is such an advantage with how the tight ends are going this season. Next, you had me at number 1, but I'm actually putting myself at number 2 because I do have what I would say is the most top-heavy team in the league, especially with Rex Burkhead's injury, putting him on IR. If any of my top 3 running backs gets injured, I'm forced to start TJ Yeldon or Corey Clement, which just would weaken my team so much. And then Marquise Goodwin and Chris Hogan both aren't looking like solid wide receiver 2 options. And if anything goes bad with any of my starters, I'm going to be scrounging the waiver wire for just any production I can find. Which leads me to my number 1 overall team, Dylan, because Dylan is the second highest scorer in the league, I believe. Maybe third behind Jake Logan. But his team is just all around super solid. He relies a bit on the Minnesota offense, but their offense is looking good all around. And with the possibility of Le'Veon Bell getting traded, then James Conner is just such a value pick that he got. And everyone on his bench looks like it could be a bona fide starter on a lot of different teams. And he's just got a lot less to worry about with me if someone does happen to go down.
So those were our power rankings for this week. Next, we're going to go up and talk about our matchup of the week, which we decided was Greg versus Tyler. When deciding this, we decided to go with one of the teams that was 0-3 to see if they could make a bounce back this week, and we ultimately decided on Greg versus Tyler. We're looking to see Tyler make an effort this week that's good enough to put him in the win column, but we're not super sure it's actually going to happen.
Yeah, Tyler's definitely in a good spot here against Greg. If we look at his current projections, he has an 82% chance of beating Greg according to Sleeper, but Greg currently doesn't have a tight end that is playing on his roster, so we'll see if that changes anything. But I think if Greg can actually play starters in both running back positions, that he still has a pretty good shot of keeping Tyler winless this week.
I talked a bit here about my opinion on the percentage chance bar and how I find it kind of sus in a lot of cases, especially when the football games are actually happening. For example, 2 weeks ago when I was playing against Lassie and I was only up by like a couple points, and it still said I had like a 99% chance of winning during Monday Night Football when the Seahawks when he still had Brandon Marshall playing, and he was just like one catch away, like one big play away from winning. So I'm not sure how it's like a 1% chance of that happening. So what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start tracking the percentage bars of what they're at every Sunday morning right before the games start, and I'm going to see how accurate the predictions actually are. So I'll look out for that in future episodes.
Frankie, yeah, there's something else I'd like to talk about, and that is my upset of the week.
I'm upset. Louder! I'm upset. Louder! I'm upset. Say it louder! I'm upset.
And, there's a lot of teams that seem pretty favored this week. A lot of good teams playing not as good teams. But I think one team that we are both pretty low on has a decent shot of securing a victory this week. And that is actually Austin Lassiter beating Jake Logan. And my reasoning for that is Jake Logan is currently dealing with Adrian Peterson on bye, so he's forced to start Jordan Wilkins in his running back spot. No one would want to have to do that. And a lot of Jake Logan's production comes from those Rams wide receivers who are playing Minnesota this week, which could easily keep all the production away from them. And finally, Lassie's got Saquon Barkley up against New Orleans. Who knows how many points he could put up against that defense. I think he's in for a big week.
There are a lot of question marks around Austin's team this week, including is LaShawn McCoy going to play? Is Josh Gordon going to be able to be effective in New England? Because of those question marks, I'm not super sure how I feel about the upset pick of this week, but I think I'm on board. Let's go, Austin.
And lastly, Jake Logan has Mike Evans and O.J. Howard against that Chicago defense, which has been pretty solid this week. There's a lot of chance that Jake Logan has some busts on his team.
Moving right into mailbag, Levi asks, who's better right now, Will Fuller or DeAndre Hopkins, and why?
Fuller is a good flex play most weeks, but I feel like overall you have to go with the consistency and the talent and the and just everything about DeAndre Hopkins. What do you think?
I'm honestly not quite sure. Will Fuller has outscored DeAndre Hopkins both weeks he's played, and he actually had more targets than Hopkins last week, which is pretty surprising. I think Will Fuller has a bit of an advantage not having to go up against that number one coverage that DeAndre Hopkins is going to have to go against. But it's just so hard to bet against DeAndre Hopkins, who's just an amazing wide receiver.
Next question comes in from Devin, who asks, can studs and stoners be exiled as a division? No. Moving on.
I think what Devin fails to realize when he's asking about exiling this division is all the free wins that us alphas will get once we get to finally play some of those lesser teams. And maybe we'll have some other alphas like Jake Logan, as I'm predicting, lose to some studs or stoners, which will help put me firmly in the lead of the alpha division.
Dylan writes in, asking, more likely to be an RB1 rest of season, Le'Veon Bell or Chris Carson?
And this is one I've been thinking about all morning, and I'm not sure I have an answer.
See, that's a tough question because I'm not sure exactly what he means by being an RB1. If he's saying who I think is more likely to put up a decent amount of RB1 weeks for the rest of the season,
Yeah.
I think Le'Veon Bell will have more weeks where he finishes as an RB1 than Chris Carson will. But if you ask me who I think will score the most points for the rest of the season, I'd probably have to go with Chris Carson. But I think a lot of those Chris Carson points will be put up on Dylan's bench, so it won't really matter.
Yeah, it's true. I'm just looking ahead to Chris Carson's schedule. I get that he feasted on a questionable Dallas front eight. I watched the game a bit too, and yeah, that defensive line just got dominated this week. I'm not someone who believes Chris Carson, and the question to me is just hard because like we have no idea when Bell's going to come back. There's just no idea. So, yeah, I would bet on Bell, but it's just the variables are impossible to know.
That's for sure. But all we know is that it doesn't matter for Dylan because he's going to lose in heartbreaking fashion like the Vikings will anyway. So I have one mailbag question, actually two, but from one person.
All right.
Justin Moss wrote in, who is going to surprise in weeks 4 through 6, both falling from grace and rising to stardom?
We're talking about owners or talking about players?
I'm assuming he's asking owners, but I'm sure he will appreciate either way.
Oh, wow. I'm looking ahead to the next couple weeks' schedule. Let's see. Who's going to...
One team that I definitely think is going to have a fall from grace that I think almost has already started is Logan Roth. You know, he was starting off high, 2-0, but then he lost to the lowest scoring team in the league in Lassie. Now he's got a tough game against me. Not even sure who his next opponents are, but there's no way.
He has Justin the next week, and then he'll have Greg the week after.
Ooh. See, Justin could definitely get his first win if he doesn't win this week against Logan the next week. So I could easily see Logan going under 500 in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I'm more looking to see who's going to explode here. I feel like, or who's going to rise above, and I feel like, I don't know. The answer has to be. Let's see. Let's see who Tyler's playing. So this week,
he's playing Greg.
Yeah, but then the week after he has me, and so he won't win that one, obviously. So it can't be Tyler. Although looking at that matchup, why am I predicted for 70 points? Oh, because my quarterback's on bye. All right, well, this is a hard one.
Well, Justin did ask a question. Do we think that he could get that rise? This week he plays Frankie in a very closely projected game. If he pulls off the win here, then he could probably put off the win against Logan, and he could definitely get a rise in these coming weeks.
He has you in weeks. I mean, if he can pull out, he'll have you in week 6.
When the Saints are on bye, so it won't have
Saints
Kamara.
Yeah, won't have Kamara.
Or my kicker.
Looking for buys on his team as well. I'm not seeing any. So that's a possibility, I guess. I feel like Justin could definitely win these next 2 weeks, but I don't see him winning in week 6. So I'm not sure if I really see any team exploding in the next 3 weeks. It's yeah.
One final team that I think could definitely get a fall from grace is Jake Logan. You know, I'm already predicting that he's going to get upset this week. Next week he plays JP when the Patriots are playing Indianapolis, and he has Mike Evans and OJ Howard on bye.
Yes.
And then after that, he's got a tough matchup
against Dylan.
With Dylan. So I could easily see him dropping at maybe 2 or the 3 next games.
Yeah, that is very true. Yeah. Did you have another mailbag question, or that was it?
One final question, which I'm not sure if we want to answer this one, is analytically, who has had the best team so far. I guess looking at a lot of the stats, I do have the best team with the highest points per game over the next highest by 9 points each week. And then I also have the highest overall wins based off my power ranking Excel sheet with
Yep.
4 wins over the next highest, which is Dylan. So if I had to answer the question, I'd say myself, but that ignores a lot of the problems that are occurring on my bench right now.
It might be Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all so much for bearing with us through this episode. I promise this will be the worst episode we ever do audio-wise. It was a mess. I will have it fixed, I promise. But thank you all for sticking by. Really appreciate it. Good luck to everyone on your matchups this week, besides for Justin and Logan. And we'll come back at you next week with another recap, some more previews. If you guys might have noticed, we didn't have a meme of the week segment this week because all the memes were trash. So make better memes. Alrighty. Thank you guys all again for listening, and I'll catch you all later.